there are a number of ways we can have our minds blown. There are facts, there are figures, there are events, there are statistics, there are stories all over the internet, and here are a few that I came across that actually blew my mind. And if you see that little teeny tiny thing, it's a strand of DNA, and I've enhanced its size, because actually if you took a piece of DNA from inside your cell and stretched it out, it'd be about 5 centimeters long. Well, the average human body has 37 trillion cells, and if you took and uncoiled all the DNA contained in those 37 trillion cells and put them end to end, they would traverse from the sun to Pluto and back 17 times. End to end in our bodies. I mean, that kind of just blew my mind. Here's another factoid that blew my mind. Chickens see more colors than human beings do. What's with that? Do you know what that means? That means that we can't see as many colors in the rainbows as chickens can, because there are about 1 million different hues and colors in the rainbow, and we can't see them. But chicken, okay, that blew my mind. Jellyfish. This jellyfish in particular has figured out how to do something that humans have wanted to do for a very long time, and that is to revert to a younger age. They revert to a younger age after they get to be sexually mature and they reproduce. They actually go back to a younger age in their bodies. I want some of that. Twitter, if you took all the tweets that were posted in a single day and you put all those words together in a novel-like format, the novel would be 10 million pages long. Blows your mind. And YouTube's, if you watched every video on YouTube, it would take you over 1,000 years. 1,000 years, so let's get started. Actually, I have a video to show that's 29 seconds, but it's all about blowing your mind and what it could look like if we could see. What? We can add our own sound effects. Here we go, ready? I like it. Wait for it, wait for it. There it comes. Oh yeah, oh yeah. Whoa, whoa. And what about him? Yes. Okay, 29 seconds of having our minds blown. In unity, the mind, our mind, is foundational to everything we believe. It's foundational for every experience we have in our lives and in the greater world. Our mind is that source from which is formed everything. Our relationships are formed from our mind. Our relationship with the divine, our relationship with ourselves, our relationship with other people, they're all formed from our mind. From our mind is our relationship with play, with work, with money, with health. It all begins with the mind. Every experience is an expression that generates from our mind. So it's really important for us to mind our mind, right? To pay attention to our mind. Two great minds are attributed with saying this same quote, and their work lives overlap. So we really don't know who said it first, so I attribute it to both. A mind stretched by a new idea can never return to its original dimensions. Remember the first time you walked into a unity community and you were exposed to the spiritual concept that God is not an anthropomorphic being, which is a really fancy way for saying God is not a human-like or a man-like creature who sits in a throne and wears long white robes and has a long white beard. What do you mean God is energy? What do you mean that God is omnipresent? What do you mean that God is principle, the essence of love and life? That is mind-blowing. And our mind is stretched by that new idea and it can't go back. It can never return to its original dimensions. which we're saying fine. When our lives are going great, we say fine, no problem. I totally get that I am the source of all the good in my life. I am the one who manifests my reality. I did this. I got good ideas from God, and I put them into action. I created this. When our life is going good, yeah, that works. But when our life doesn't appear to be so good, we want to revert to that anthropomorphic God. We want God to be warm and fuzzy and put his arms around us and hold us and make the world go away. But we can't, because our mind has been stretched by this new idea. Our mind cannot return to its original dimensions. There are at least 35 miracles recorded in the Bible for Jesus' 3-year ministry. These miracles were about healing of physical and mental. They were about healings and miracles of supply, like the wine and the food, feeding the 5,000. Miracles even overcoming that greatest obstacle that we call death. Unity writer Jim Lewis defines miracle as a miracle is the action of principle through the consciousness of an individual or individuals. I think the idea of God as principle is probably the biggest breach we need to traverse when we start thinking about God as love, God as light, God that doesn't have arms or legs or hands or feet. That's probably the biggest breach. But I think that's a very complicated way of saying it, so I say it this way. A miracle is an event that required the activity of God. It's an event that happened and we think it's a miracle or we feel like it's a miracle because it required the activity of God. Haven't you ever heard somebody say, it's going to take a miracle? It's going to take a miracle. Fundraising, I think, is a miracle. I think it's a miracle that this community in 23 days raised over $30,000, bang, to pay off our mortgage last December. It was a miracle that required the activity of God. Last April, Eric Pearl came and he worked with people in this community, and at his presentation he asked for volunteers. Gary Onsky got up and sat right up here on stage. And for 20 years, Gary had not been able to raise his arm above his shoulder. Dr. Pearl worked with Gary, and in 10 minutes, Gary had his hand up here. An activity like this for Gary required the activity of God. So I'm wondering, what has blown your mind coming into Unity? What has blown your mind as a miracle lately, in the last week, in the last month, or since you discovered, like, you know, I know there's people in here who came through Science of Mind. Okay, so Sharon has one.
A letter from Reverend Mindy Tucker.
Oh.
Thanking us for being here, welcoming us here. It was the best letter we ever got.
Oh.
And it belonged to 7 children.
Wow. And that's your first letter?
Yes.
Wow. That required the activity of God because I got the idea and then there you are. Wow. Thank you. So what else required the activity of God in your life? Sometimes it's a baby being born. Louise Miller, who usually comes to this service, her daughter just adopted a baby boy. I mean, that required adoption. Ooh, well, having a baby requires the activity of God. Yeah, say that. Okay. Laurie Dawson.
I use Unity, Silent Unity in Nigeria because at the time I worked with them, and I got a lovely picture or video of a peacock spreading its feathers, and it came with about 25 or 30 people on that same prayer. So I did share it with Reverend Mindy and Reverend Mindy, and I'm most welcome to share it with everyone. It's a great little moment.
But it's like out of the blue, right? Which is another name for God. Out of the blue comes this beautiful, yeah, I like it. So when we think of these things as miracles, and we think about our mind being blown as miracles, Unity writer Eric Butterworth says, but what is a miracle? In this orderly universe that is regulated by changeless law, it is inconceivable that natural law can be abrogated. We use the word supernatural, but what do we mean by this? The supernatural of today becomes the natural of tomorrow. So something that we used to think was supernatural, we are like, oh ho hum. Sort of like the example he gave is eclipses, solar eclipses. You know, in the olden days, people didn't know what they were, and they were frightened because they were ignorant of the facts and the science around what happens every now and then in a predictable manner with a solar eclipse. The light of day diminishes and sometimes pretty much disappears altogether. But now, because of science, we know that that's a natural occurrence, and it's not that we schedule them, but we can determine what their schedules are as a natural order of the universe. Back in the day, if you got a cut or a scratch and it got infected, most likely you would die. Those infections were fatal, unless for some reason there was a miracle and you lived, and we didn't know it at the time, but that miracle was quite natural. It was a natural antibiotic in our own body that was able to overcome the infection. Now, when we get an infection from a scratch or a wound, we just take antibiotics. It's a very natural course of getting well, right? So it's different today because we understand more. There is no supernatural. There is only God's great natural. There is no miracle. There is only the ever-present possibility of laying hold of divine law on higher and higher levels. Our minds are blown only because those mind-blowing experiences are not in our consciousness yet. They're not something that we have a perception for. They're not something that we have all the facts for. Once we have the facts, then we create a new reality. But until we do, we create our reality based on what we know. We create our reality based on our skill set. We create our reality based on our consciousness. We create our reality based on our awareness of the divine moving in and through our lives. And sometimes the reality that we create doesn't exactly match up with our desire and our idea of God's great natural. We see things in our lives as challenges or problems or issues. The futurist Barbara Marx Hubbard says challenges are drivers for spiritual and evolutionary genius. They're drivers for our evolution. So here we are experiencing whatever capacity we have of our perfect health, of our divine abundance, of our harmonious relationships, of world peace, and we're actually on the edge of transformation. We are on the edge of the next great understanding of God's great natural. James Dillard Freeman, who is a poet laureate, and many of us know him as the author or the creator of the Prayer for Protection, used to tell the story about 3 men in a boat. 3 men in a boat go fishing. They're out on the lake. It's a nice day when all of a sudden a storm comes up and the wind starts rocking the boat. The waves start splashing water and pouring into the boat. And the first man says, "We should pray." And the second man says, "We should bail." And the third man said, "Let's pray and bail at the same time." And I love this because it's the perfect how-to for expanding our consciousness. It's the perfect how-to for stretching those dimensions of our mind so they can't return to or revert to their original position. The first how-to is, let's pray. Let's pray. Seek first the kingdom and all these things will be given unto you. It's not like come up with some good ideas and a plan. It's let's pray. Let's turn to God. The Message translation of the Bible, which is much more modern in vernacular, says, "If God gives such attention to the appearance of wildflowers, most of which are never seen, don't you think He'll attend to you, take pride in you, do His best for you?" What I'm trying to do here is to get you to relax, to not be so preoccupied with getting so you can respond to God's giving. People who don't know God and the way He works fuss over these things. but you know both God and how he works. Steep your life in God reality, God initiative, God provisions. You will find all your everyday human concerns will be met. We don't have to know how our physical healing is going to occur. We only have to hold that it will. We don't have to know how financial amplification or restoration is going to occur. We only have to hold that it can and that it will. We don't have to know how world peace is ever going to be achieved. All we have to do is hold that it can and that it will, because the harmony that we set out, the intention of harmony that we set out, is comprised of many voices. Step 1, seek first the kingdom, and all the how-tos will be taken care of. Step 2, be open to new ideas. Wow, we could bail. How perfect is that? And I love how ideas evolve. I've been fascinated with drone technology and all the different uses for drones, because it started out as a military thing, right? You know, military, they used it to carry certain things. But now it's progressed so that drones are being used in Africa to carry medicine and critical supplies to remote villages to save hundreds of thousands of lives. Drones are being used for all kinds of things. I went to a wedding in December, and the couple came up the Intracoastal Waterway in a boat and then came on to Wrightsville Beach. It was really wonderful, and there's this little drone flying along, filming the whole thing. My brother goes deep sea fishing, and he uses his drone to find floaters and bird piles, because where there are floaters, then there are bird piles, there are big game fish coming up right underneath. I just think it's so amazing how we can be open to having a new idea. And then we're not complete without step 3, which is to take action, to both pray and bail. We get the good idea, take the action. Take the action. I have one last story, and that's about a father who had built a big business, a very successful business, and he had 3 sons. He was coming to the end of his life, and he was trying to decide and discern which of the 3 sons he should leave his business to. So he issued them a challenge, and he said, whichever one of you can fill the warehouse in the least expensive way will inherit the business. So the number 1 son goes out, and he gets a piece of paper, and he puts things, and he does some research, and his proposal is to fill the warehouse with sand. Pretty inexpensive. But the second son puts pencil to paper, does some research, and he presents the package. He's going to fill the warehouse with foam packing peanuts. Even less expensive. So the father, who thinks, oh, sand, that's brilliant, I'm going to leave it to him. And then, oh my gosh, packing peanuts, that's brilliant, maybe I should leave it to him. But the third son took them all by surprise. He simply took a candle, a single candle, and went into the center of the warehouse and lit that candle, and it was filled with light. This is our job. This is our holy purpose, to shine our light, to expand to the edges of our consciousness and go beyond. We are the heart. We are the hands. We are the voice of Spirit on earth. I can't wait to see how your mind gets blown next. Let's sing our way into meditation. You are the heart, you are the hands, you are the voice of Spirit on earth, and oh, you are